Today's video is about 4 Canadian men that explored the nationally known, ominous Fang Cave in British Columbia, Canada, when things went wrong. This is their story. Before we get started, I have something I want to share with you. I had a big problem. I ran out of shows to watch on Netflix that could help me relax after telling a scary cave story. But someone was listening. That someone is today's video sponsor, Atlas VPN. They showed me that I could use their VPN to change the country I am located in, and this resets the Netflix library to a completely new one with all new shows. This can be done over and over. You can grab Atlas VPN for $1.83 a month, plus 3 months free, with a 30-day money-back guarantee. It is worth it to try this because of the 30-day money-back guarantee. This software is more than just a VPN. It blocks all the malicious links, ads, trackers, and notifies you when someone is trying to steal your data. Atlas VPN works on literally every device, so you have to give this crazy deal a shot at just $1.83 a month, plus the 3 months free with the 30-day money-back guarantee, which is, just so you know, the best deal you can get in the VPN space. You can grab this deal right now by going to get.atlasvpn.com/MrDeified or by clicking on the link in the description below. John Huybers, Mike Nash, and 2 senior members of the Alberta Speleological Society had driven to Prince George from Calgary for what was to be a 2-day trip, first exploration of Fang Cave. The Fang Cave complex is one of Canada's largest caves that descends below the Earth's surface. For those who intend to explore the caves, proper equipment and caving experience is required, as the area is hazardous and recommended only for experienced cavers. Rescues have been needed in the past, and explorers have been extremely injured. Fang Cave was discovered in 1976. It is situated among a diverse limestone complex and includes other caves to explore, such as Tooth de Cave and Window on the West. The main entrance of Fang and several others are too dangerous to enter during the spring snowmelt, draining the snow from above. Exploration of the cave can only be made during the fall due to the extreme danger of water filling up inside the cave. The water entering the cave moves fast, creating a current that makes the cave a death trap for cave diving. Even if you are technically skilled from a seasoned cave explorer's point of view, it must be noted that Fang Cave is dark, cold, has drops, and water hazards. Large rocks are known to shatter off the cave walls, which can hit explorers and cause gruesome injuries. The sharp rocks that break off from the walls can weigh thousands of pounds. Climbing gear must be used in the cave, but the rope's anchors that go into the wall are at risk of breaking off, spurring a rock fall. Outside of the cave is not safe either, as another risk factor in the area is bear attacks. It is not uncommon to see a bear in the area, and you must be aware of them at all times. On Thursday, November 11th, 2010, 2 people were rescued from Fang Cave on a snowy mountainside after more than 60 search and rescue personnel worked through the night to save them. A man and a woman, both in their 20s, were injured when one of them fell on top of the other while climbing inside the cave. To reach the pair, the volunteer rescuers had to climb 1.5 miles, 2.5 kilometers, up the mountainside through shin-deep snow, and then pick their way through an icy, treacherous boulder field to reach the opening and then descend into the cave. Outdoorsman George Evanoff was from Prince George, Canada. He is known for being a big game hunter, mountaineer, cave discoverer, ski patrol leader, ski guide, avalanche specialist, conservation advocate, mentor, and pioneer in ecotourism in Canada's Rocky Mountains. George Evanoff understood the mountains and nature. He knew how to enjoy being there, and he inspired others to a similar awareness, encouraging them to tread lightly on the land. He did it all and is known as a hero in the community. George is one of the first people to explore Fang Cave and provided much of the known details about the cave. In 1998, George was out exploring near Fang Cave, British Columbia, when he stumbled upon a bear shortly after killing a moose about a half mile, 800 meters from his cabin. George knew that he needed to get out of that area and distance himself from the bear. Unfortunately, grizzly bears defend their kill, and George was a threat. The massive grizzly bear attacked him, leading to his death. George was bitten on the neck, but he was not mauled or eaten by the bear. His body was later found by a search helicopter crew a short distance from his cabin. Later, the grizzly bear was seen in the area, and it is not known if they decided to kill the bear that caused George's death. George Evanoff's many honors include naming Evanoff Provincial Park in the McGregor Mountains, northeast of Prince George. The park is situated in the Heart Ranges of the Canadian Rockies. It provides a scenic, easily accessible destination for backcountry recreation. Two separate trails, the Fang Trail and the Trophy Trail, provide access to the small alpine basins, with a connection over Fang Mountain. This place is absolutely breathtaking. George took many of the secrets of Fang Cave with him when he died, but his memory will live on partly through the continued exploration of the cave. Mike Nash was a good friend of George, and they spent time exploring the Prince George area before George's passing. In the spring of 1981, George Evanoff and Mike Nash did a 4-day ski tour and snow cave camp in the McGregor Mountains, British Columbia. One evening, around the campfire, George told Mike about a large hole in the ground in the mountains just across the valley from where they were. George had found this hole years earlier while hunting in the alpine area, which he called the Fangs because of the prominent jagged ridge above. He had explored a short distance inside the entranceway, as had occasional hunters in the past. Still, no one had ventured far inside it because it quickly became technical and very dangerous. This place was what is known to become Fang Cave. Mike Nash's newfound interest in caving led him and George to explore the cave 2 months later in June 1981. In September 1981, Mike's friend Claude and 2 senior members of an alpine club drove to Prince George for what was to be a 2-day initial exploration of the cave. They first explored the resurgence, which is usually filled with water, but it didn't rain much in the fall, so at this time it was only partially filled. Later, after setting up the camp in the high meadows above the cave, they explored down from the main entrance. During the first afternoon, Mike and the 2 Alpine Club members became severely lost in the labyrinth of the cave. They had no idea how to get out and panicked because they had limited resources if they couldn't get out. In this panicked state, they became close to descending a waterfall. For some reason, they decided to hold off, saving their lives. This waterfall would have most likely killed them if they had attempted it. It was later named Disconnection Falls because of that incident and a related surveying mapping incident. They made some mistakes on that trip, but it was a learning lesson for Mike and his 2 friends. A month later, in 1981, George and Mike, accompanied by some experienced hiking friends from Prince George, returned to the cave. They rappelled through the cave's 3rd entrance, directly into what became Canada's 2nd largest underground room, which they named the Colosseum. From there, they rappelled down the corkscrew and became the first humans to walk down the wide, active stream passage deep in the cave that they named Queen's Gallery. This place made them feel like they were on another planet. Mike Nash has 34 years of experience with outdoor and backcountry recreation in Prince George in northern British Columbia. He is a resident of Prince George and has been writing about the area in newsletters, magazines, and community newspapers for over a decade. Mike is also the author of 4 other outdoors books. John Huybers, a veteran climber and outdoorsman, is a professional forester and is a highly accomplished mountaineer, rock and ice climber, backcountry hiker, skier, canoeer, and whitewater rafter. Since moving to Prince George in 1996 with his wife, Catherine, he has served as the chairman of the Prince George chapter of the Alpine Club of Canada, taught climbing and rescue courses, organized avalanche awareness programs, and volunteered with several recreational organizations. He's done a lot to ensure that he's got the skills to take on Fang Cave. On the morning of October 17th, 2009, John Huybers, Mike Nash, and 2 other local members of the Alpine Club entered Fang Cave by the middle entrance. They rigged the entrance into the Coliseum with an existing bolt hanger and camming device using a doubled 9mm dynamic rope to descend the first drop of the cave. Cave columns occur when stalactites and stalagmites fuse. They decided to use one of these large columns at the head of the corkscrew, which is a twisting, dry streamway which becomes increasingly vertical as it drops. They rigged an 11mm dynamic rope for descent. The lower section of the corkscrew is more vertical and has a nasty drop further down the cave. A camming device was placed in a crack in the wall about 10 feet or 3 meters above a ledge near the top of this section. A rebelay is created when you attach one rope to 2 anchors, and this was then put in using the cam so the other 2 people could descend or ascend at the same time. When ascending the corkscrew, John noticed that the cam had worked further into the crack, so he took some time to reposition it. He called down to the next member of the party, and they began to descend. Unfortunately, as soon as the climber put weight on the rope, the crack holding the cam opened up, causing a 1,000-pound rock to come flying off the wall. The rock fell onto John, pushing him to the ledge and pinning him there in a 3-inch deep pool of water. The cavers quickly got over to John and tried their best to remove the heavy rock off of John's torso. He was unconscious and not breathing. They were somehow able to muscle the rock off of John very slowly and carefully. Then they were able to revive him, and he started to slowly regain consciousness. However, he was having difficulty breathing, and they feared he might have a spinal injury. The injuries from the rockfall were devastating and life-threatening. John had 7 broken ribs. His collarbone was broken in 2 spots, a collapsed lung, and his right shoulder was crushed along with one of his fingers by the giant rock. This was by far one of the worst injuries he has ever had, and he was not sure at this point if he would leave the cave alive. Tamara Kostya was leading a cave exploration with a group of 3 new cavers, and they entered the cave through the middle entrance. She rigged a different anchor using a static line that they had descended into the Coliseum. They reached the top of the corkscrew and rigged another static line to descend. Tamara went down first and saw one of the Alpine Cave members coming out. The Alpine Cave member told Kostya that there was 3 more down there and they were coming up, but it would be a while. She had no idea that John had this horrible accident happen to him. After talking to the club member, Tamara saw that she didn't have enough equipment to make a full descent down that part of the cave, which would have led her to John, Mike, and the other Alpine member. Tamara and the caver she was with proceeded back to the entrance, and they were going to exit. All of a sudden, the other Alpine member that was with John and Mike was able to make their way up to the entrance, and they told Tamara that John had got crushed by a rock. The Alpine member also told Tamara that there was a satellite phone at the entrance and that she could use it to call for help. Tamara, who's a very experienced caver, decided to go back into the cave to help John. She made her way to him and quickly realized he was in terrible condition. One of the new cavers that was with Tamara jumped on the satellite phone and called 911 to the Prince George SAR Rescue Service and the British Columbia Cave Rescue Organization. They also set up a spot beacon at the entrance which would give off a signal for help to bring in as many rescuers as possible. This is the first time the spot beacon has ever been used in the Prince George region, so it caught everyone's attention. Search and Rescue sent 2 helicopters to the site, and the rescuers started working on a plan to get John out of the cave. A helicopter had to leave the scene because of mechanical problems. Then a more sturdy helicopter was sent in. The terrain was too steep to parachute into, so the rescue crews were dropped in a meadow above the cave, and then they had about a half-hour hike to get to the cave entrance. At this point, the cave was starting to get crowded. There was 9 rescue groups, including cavers in the area that heard about what was going on and decided to volunteer their help. Tamara had all extra clothing that anyone had brought into the cave site to help warm John up and make him as comfortable as possible, moving him out of that water and into a semi-sitting position. At this point, John is still in the cave and he's lost consciousness. Some were thinking that he was dead. He was having a more challenging time breathing, and the pain was unbearable. This cave is also very technical, so getting him out was going to be a massive challenge. Not to mention, John is very tall, so it's very hard for them to put him in a stretcher. Finally, they were able to get him into a stretcher, and the rescuers began moving him at about 8:15 p.m. There was only a couple places that they could move him around because the stretcher was so large. They first had to bring him down 3,000 feet to a rescue point before they could set him up properly to bring him out. And they were passing the stretcher from one person to another in order to get him out. They were making some progress, and the rescue team eventually brought John up to the Coliseum at 9 p.m. At this point, they checked John's vitals and realized that his breathing was becoming a little bit better because they were able to prop up his head. Finally, John was brought up to the middle entrance at 11:30 p.m. From there, it was another 3 hours to haul him down the mountain to a location where the stretcher could then be loaded into a rescue helicopter. One of the rescuers said this was one of the nastiest cave rescues he's ever been a part of in his 27 years of search and rescue. The rescuers suffered some minor injuries as well, as one of the rescuers had a rock fall on him, causing bruising, and others were cut by the sharp rocks within the cave. There are two main types of ropes, dynamic and static. Dynamic ropes are designed to stretch and absorb the impact of a fallen climber. Static ropes stretch little, making them very efficient in situations like lowering an injured climber or hauling a load up. John, Mike, and the Alpine Club members were in the cave using dynamic ropes. However, the group had substantial experience and had the financing available to use a proper static rope. When the ascending Alpine member repositioned the rebelay cam that was in the crack, the rock's stability was not noticed to be compromised. This may have been due just to the size of the rock and that it could be simply trusted. Analysis of the incident notes that repeatedly checking the rigging of the cams and using proper rope may have prevented the accident. John was able to make it to the hospital okay, and after 2 days, he was out of intensive care and in stable condition. A total of 52 rescuers were involved from Prince George SAR and Outdoors Clubs and BC Cave Rescue. Mike Nash wrote a book about George Evanoff's philosophy towards the outdoors. The name of the book is The Mountain Knows No Expert, George Evanoff, Outdoorsman and Contemporary Hero, and I highly recommend you check this book out. I read this book as part of the research for this story and was surprised when I couldn't put it down. Mike's other book, Outdoor Safety and Survival, is also an essential read. I want to say thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you like the content. And as always, please be extra nice to the like button. And I had many other disaster videos on my channel that you might want to check out. See you at the next one.